Duke Getzinger is a marketing therapist and thought coach. He teaches entrepreneurs and business professionals how to gain a strategic advantage by simply conditioning their thought processes to see things that others just don't see, and shows them how to alter their approach in order to increase the level of their success. So, Duke, what's the most common marketing challenge you hear from businesses today?
Actually, it's probably twofold. Mm-hmm. One would be, how do I stand out? And the other one is, whatever I'm doing is not working. What do I do? And I know that's a kind of a broad question, right, but it's like putting out fires. I used to own an advertising agency and strategy firm in Boston a number of years ago. And that's all I did all day was put out fires. You know, companies call me up after they've tried every traditional process and a wall, and then they go, okay, now what? Now what do I do? I'm out of ideas. And it was my job to basically brainstorm on the phone with them, give them a million things that they never thought of before, and a sense of optimism. And next thing you know, they get off the phone, go, "Wow, that's great! No, I never even thought about that." So it gave them a little bit of an uplift, and then usually I got a call about 10 minutes long. I was like, "Can you help me with that?" So I was like, "That was great, but I have no idea how to do what you just told me to do." So usually that's where I got into. But these were more on the corporate side. I dealt with a lot of Fortune 500 companies and so forth, and their their issues were on a grand scale, but then there were also the entrepreneurial guys that were out there going, okay, how do I make noise in a crowded market and, for somebody to hear me? I'm a tree falling in the forest, so what do I do?
Right.
And either had no budget or very little to deal with, and they just needed some creativity to go along with their enthusiasm.
And some of that creativity for the little guys, what kind of suggestions would you make to one of the little guys?
Oh, it depends on what they were. If they were a brick and mortar guy and they just needed to get some, more customers through the door, that was one thing. If they were an internet guy and they said, hey, I need to drive some more traffic, or I'm trying to build my network, or I'm trying to, it depends on whatever their objective is going to be. And the interesting thing about it is there's not one solution saying, okay, how do I do this? I remember back in my strategy firm days, I hired one of my clients. And she came in, I figured, hey, she was a client of mine. She sat on the other side of the desk, and she understands the animal, so to speak. So she would probably be a great executive for the company, account executive. And she sat down in front of me and said, okay, now how do we create a strategy for X? And I go, all depends. Who's the company? The resources are different. The company is different. The departments are different. There's so many variables that it's not like, okay, here's what you do, A, B, C, D, and this works for everybody. That's not the case. Everybody's different. Everybody's a different environment that they're in. Their resources are different. So I always deem myself a thought or a marketing therapist. So my job is to peel back the onion, ask them the questions that I need to ask them to see exactly where they're positioned, how they got there, and what their expectations are, and why they're doing what they're doing. And then once I get an understanding of that, then it's a lot easier for me to turn around and say, okay, now that I understand where you're coming from, now that I understand what you've done, let's take a look at it this way. But there's been some real off-the-wall creative things. I've done things with junk mail. I've done things with I did one thing for Motorola back in the day. In Boston, there's a thing called the Charles River Regatta. And it's the basically the long rowing boats that go down the river. And, all the colleges and Harvard and all of Yale, they're all, competing. But, I mean, the place is shut down. You can't find a hotel room in Boston to save your life. And this thing is just wall-to-wall people all the way down the river. So, but Motorola wanted to market there. Well, the problem is that there you couldn't, they wanted to hand stuff out in the crowd and so forth, and it just wasn't allowed. And what I did is I went out and I got a fraternity, and I bought them 2 cases of beer, and I bought them T-shirts and a coach's whistle. And so on each T-shirt there was one big letter. And so I got together and I said, here's what I want you to do. So what I wanted to do is that they were all together. They all had T-shirts, and when the leader basically blew his whistle, they all stood in line. And when they stood in line, it spelled out the special website that Motorola wanted to use for its marketing purposes that we developed.
Wow.
And you could see it clear across the river because the letters were huge. They were extra large T-shirts just hanging down, down, and the guys were like, hey. And it was great because then when the police came, they just dispersed into the crowd. And so they couldn't really do anything. But then they got a kick out of it. I actually got more of my money's worth because I gave them $500 and 2 cases of beer, And the next thing you know, they're trying to figure out how long they can get away with doing it. So they're all over the place. And then on top of that, camera crews caught them. So it was on the news. Motorola got a ton worth of visibility.
Yeah, free publicity.
Well, but I created a human billboard because there was not allowed any. It wasn't acceptable to put signage up there. It wasn't. You weren't allowed to do this or do that. And I was like, over my dead body, I'll find a way to do it. So
wow.
It's a matter of saying, whatever you want to do, thinking, look beyond the obvious. Don't take things at face value. Don't accept anything. Figure out a creative way to do it. So it was a way for me to turn around and get them the visibility that they wanted to in a creative manner that didn't exist. It was just a matter of saying, okay, let me put a little creativity and the traffic on the website, especially after the news broadcast, was out of this world. So it was pretty fun.
For people that want to know how a brain like this ticks, tell us about your upcoming ebook. What's it all about?
Well, the ebook was something. It's about social network marketing. The title of the book is "Who the Hell Wants a Social Rolodex Full of People They Don't Even Know?" And it's kind of true. And the premise of it is, if you connected with me 6 months ago, or if I connected with you or followed you on Facebook or became a fan of yours or followed you on Twitter, whatever the case may be, 6 months ago, 2 months ago, last week, yesterday, and I followed you, you followed me, and then that's where it ends, then what's the point? And everybody talks about, it's about developing relationships. It's not about numbers.
Right.
What people lose sight of is it's the microwave version of marketing. I strip it back to the days before the internet, when I owned an ad agency, and it was all about visually positioning a company. And most people just race to the finish line, throw something up, and then they're looking for success. They want to see results,
Correct.
And it's limited at best. And so what I try to do is turn around and give them some cases and some points, and saying, okay, it's about relationships. How do you cultivate those relationships, and then how do you use those platforms to your advantage, and also understanding what you're doing with them. And there is in there. I mean, it is. If you want to go develop your network on LinkedIn, if you want to get 1 million targeted followers on Twitter, or 1,000 group what do you want to call them? Groupies.
Groupies, yeah.
Facebook. Yeah, we get picture. Not fans. I want Facebook groupies. But if you get those fans on Facebook, how do you go about doing that? And I answer that for them. It's not rocket science. It's not, here's 1 million steps to do it. You do this, you go here. It's just after you make that connection. If I accept your connection or you accept mine, then what? And I don't think really people have a clear understanding of what happens after that. They just think, okay, we get to connect with each other, and then it's supposed to just all fall into place. And it doesn't. They just go on and try to find the next connection. So,
you've already mentioned a couple of thinking outside of the box ideas. What would you be willing to give our listeners as far as a few more marketing tips?
You want them for brick and mortar, or you want them for internet, or what?
I would say for internet, because most of the people are just trying to get more clients and make more money from their home-based business.
Well, the whole thing with social network marketing is about trying to cultivate and develop your outer circle. And there's an outer circle and there's an inner circle. An outer circle are the people that you've just come in contact with. Maybe you've met on LinkedIn, you sent an email or a message to every now and then. The inner circle, people you hold close to the vest, people you've collaborated with, who you could ask for a favor that wouldn't be expecting something in return, who have their own circle of influence on all their own. So what you're trying to do is you want to get those people to believe in you. The one thing that you're doing, or people really don't understand, is you're not marketing a product. You're not marketing a service. You're not marketing yourself. You're marketing a belief. You have something of value to offer, and you want somebody to believe that as well. So it's your job to try to instill that belief in your marketing efforts. And once you do that, then the word of mouth will grow. Those people who believe in you, that are part of your inner circle, will be more than happy to be associated with you, want to do things on your behalf, want to collaborate with you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it goes beyond that. Most people turn around, especially if they're in their infancy, if they're entrepreneurs and they're just getting started, they want to be able to connect. They want to get those people that want to have something to do with them, that have some value and bring something to the table, and they wonder how. I put on my Facebook fan page, which is facebook.com/marketingcouch. If you go there, there's marketing tips that change every week. And the past couple tips that I made one was about Google Alerts. And Google Alerts is not news to anybody, but it's a way to keep your ear to the ground and see who's out there talking about you, your website, whatever keywords that you want to focus on. And part one of that tip was, if you're not using Google Alerts, use them. Now, the other thing that I take a look at is using things for what they were not intended for.
Right.
I go to LinkedIn, but I'm going to use it in a way it wasn't intended to be used. And the reason for that is to gain a strategic advantage over everybody else who's following suit. So if everybody goes to Twitter and using it the same way that everybody else is using it, then you're going to be limited in your success. Same thing with Facebook or Twitter. What you want to do is look at things and be a contrarian. Forget about what they were intended for and look for a strategic advantage. You know, I was at a conference once, and there were over 300 people sitting in the audience. And I grabbed the microphone and I said, I'm going to ask you guys a question. And I won't call on you. I won't ask you to answer anything. But I just want to show of hands. Do me a favor. Raise your hand if you think that you're doing anything dramatically different than the guy sitting next to you to reach your target audience. And I won't call on you. I had one person raise their hand. And my point was, guys, if you're doing the same thing as everybody else, then how do you get an edge? And the fact is that you don't. But everybody continues to follow suit. And it's those people that are afraid to kind of look beyond the obvious and not take things at face value. I kind of look at it as a user-friendly approach. If I go to this site, why are you going to this site? Well, because everybody told me to go to this site. Because if that's what you're looking for, this is the site you need to be at. Okay, well, if you click on here, it'll take you to this place, and then you're going to do X, Y, and Z. Well, what if I don't want to do X, Y, and Z? What if I want to do PDQ? You know, it's looking at something and saying, okay, I don't want to use it that way. There's an application, for example, that I just found for Twitter. And it was written for one purpose. It was designed to develop for a purpose. I looked at it and I go, oh, it would be great for this. Chances are I'll be the only one using it for that. That gives me an advantage.
Right.
You know, I look at LinkedIn, for example. LinkedIn is not about networking. It's not about groups. It's not about collaboration or anything of that nature. There is validity to that. Trust me. I mean, there's value to increasing your network and having
building relationships.
Yeah, the environment is not conducive to developing a relationship. You know, I can't, look at pictures of you. I can't, have the Facebook environment and LinkedIn. It's for me to make a network connection with you. I see your bio, and I see what group you belong to, and then I maybe can respond to your question in a group or something that you posted and comment on it. But outside of that, there's not really conducive environment for any kind of interaction or building of a relationship. So if you look at LinkedIn, when you join a group, and there are over 650,000 groups on LinkedIn, it's a huge number. You can find anything you want.
Right.
You want to find, a Tupperware party on LinkedIn. I'm sure you can find, people throwing a Tupperware party. But the thing is with LinkedIn is that it's the digest emails. Everybody joins a LinkedIn group. Usually by default, we'll get a digest email from that group every day. Here's what happened. You didn't go to the group. Well, it's a matter of saying, how do you position yourself so that when those emails are sent to everybody that's in the group, that you come up as number one at the top of that email. And think about it. If you're joining a niche group and there are 20,000 people that are on LinkedIn that are members of that group, that's 20,000 people